Today marks the fourth and final day of Supreme Court confirmation hearings for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Today's session featured panels with assessments of the nominee. The American Bar Association says its recommendation is professional, not political.
In that regard, we focus on the record of the nominee, we focus on the writings of the nominee, and we focus on the feedback we get from the lawyers and judges that practice with the nominee, against the nominee, and administer justice alongside the nominee.
Do you have an
Addressing the issue of abortion during Tuesday's hearing, Senator John Kennedy asked Judge Brown Jackson directly, quote, "When does life begin, in your opinion?"
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I don't know.
Ma'am?
I don't know.
Do you have a belief?
I have personal, religious, and otherwise beliefs that have nothing to do with the law in terms of when life begins.
Do you have a personal belief?
As a follow-up question, the senator asked if the judge had a personal belief when life begins. Judge Brown Jackson responded, quote, "I have a religious view that I set aside when I am ruling on cases." And joining me now to discuss is Carrie Severino, president of the Judicial Crisis Network. Carrie, welcome back. Always so good to see you. First off, what were your impressions of the hearings?
Well, unfortunately, we saw a lot of answers like the one you just played to Justice Kennedy, where Judge Jackson, while she may have had answers in her head, she refused to share them with the committee, and not only on issues that are not strictly speaking legal, like when life begins, or as often others have pointed out, Senator Marsha Blackburn's question is how do you define a woman? She was also unwilling to answer that, or unwilling or unable. She said she's not a biologist, but also on legal questions that you would think this clearly is something you can talk about. What is your judicial philosophy? She claimed not to have a judicial philosophy. And then periodically she would claim to have one, but then she didn't want to define it in any clear way. She didn't even want to characterize her potential future colleagues' own judicial philosophy, including the judge that she worked for. So it was very frustrating because the senators have to take a vote on this incredibly important nomination. And we have a nominee who, I think, because she recognizes the stakes in this nomination, it recognizes that the typical liberal perspective of a judge and the people that are backing her is not the one the American people want to see, which is that we want someone who's going to be confine themselves to reading law as it's written and the Constitution as it was originally understood. So while she talked about those kind of principles, she also was unwilling to commit to any one philosophy herself and said she's not an originalist.
Yeah, and I'm curious, I mean, how do you think her confirmation hearings compare to the last Supreme Court nominee, now Associate Justice Amy Coney Barrett? Can you compare the two?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, we always can be frustrated that, you want to hear the specifics from a nominee. How would you vote, say, in the Dobbs case that's coming up to overturn Roe versus Wade? How would you vote on this issue or that? We know they're not going to share those. But Amy Coney Barrett was much more forthcoming in discussing some of the details, and certainly has a very well articulated philosophy of judging. She was, as a scholar, she wrote extensively on that and could talk about it in great detail. Jackson, on the other hand, refused to give any details, and that's very concerning because you can't expect people to vote for a nominee who won't share how he or she really approaches the law, except to say that she wants to do so fairly and even-handedly. Well, I should hope that's any judge's approach, but we know there are significant differences methodologically in how judges approach the law, and she was unwilling to take a position on any of those.
Yeah, and something else that stood out to me was the fact that she stated her intention to recuse herself from a case regarding Harvard's race-conscious admissions policy, a case that could ultimately end affirmative action in college admissions. I want to get your thoughts on that, what you thought.
Yeah, I was very glad to hear her say that. She serves on the Harvard Board of Overseers and has, during the pendency of this litigation, Harvard has been sued and is now years into this litigation over its practice that is borne out by the statistics of discriminating against Asian American students in its admissions. And so that has been challenged because Harvard receives federal funding and shouldn't be allowed to discriminate on the basis of race. And since she was part of the Board of Overseers, it's entirely appropriate for her to recuse herself because she was on the inside of this organization that is a party to this lawsuit and is being sued and now coming before the Supreme Court. So I thought that was the correct answer. I think it will be a very significant case coming up next term.
And going forward, what comes next? And ultimately, do you think she'll be confirmed?
Well, you know, the current reality of the Senate is that there are 50 Democrat votes, and with the tiebreaker of Vice President Harris, that's all the votes you need for confirmation, because that would get you to 51. Currently, all of the Democratic senators have voted for every single one of Joe Biden's nominees, and that includes some very extreme nominees indeed. So unfortunately, I think just with the reality of the Senate dynamics, you know, people say elections have consequences, and this is really evidence of that. Not just the election of Joe Biden to be the president, but the election of the senators that are going to simply rubber stamp his nominees, regardless of how extreme their own positions are. Or how much they refuse to even talk about their own positions in this case. So I think that suggests that she will likely be confirmed. I don't know when the vote will be. It could be as early as next week, but more likely a couple weeks from now. The Senate Senator Schumer has said they want to get this done by the Easter recess. So obviously that only leaves us a few weeks for that, although she wouldn't take her seat on the court, if confirmed, until June at the end of the Supreme Court term.
Well, Carrie, thank you so much, and we appreciate you weighing in. Always appreciate it.
Thanks.